are going to work on our portrait for our good friend Gambit. You saw in other videos I already had him, he's all assembled, his body's done, good to go. So we're going to work on the portrait today. I'm going to be using my Infinity CR Plus with a 0.15 millimeter needle, so ultra fine line. We got our air on, and I've got some paints already pre-mixed from the Fairy Flesh set, starting with the 74004, which is your base flesh tone right here, if you need to know that. And we're going to follow that up with 2 more layers of the Fairy Flesh set, and probably finish it off with Reichland Flesh Shade by Citadel. So that being said, we can go ahead and load up our airbrush here. I already mixed these up. I like these medicine cups, as I've mentioned in earlier videos, because they have lids, and I can mix up a layer, or mix up a batch of paint that's ready for airbrush. And this actually looks like it might be a little thick, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more water to it. You hear a lot of guys out there saying that you're looking for the consistency of skim milk. I don't drink skim milk. I don't like it. I say go with what works for you. After a while, mixing paints and sending them through your airbrush, you get a feel for the consistency you're looking for just by the way it smears up on the edge of the cup and the way it sprays through your airbrush. This is starting to feel pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a whirl. Now, using the 0.15 millimeter needle on the Infinity, my paint needs to be a little thinner, and that's because this is a really fine detailed needle that we're looking for. I feel like that music's a little too loud. Let's see if I can switch that out. There we go, that's a little better. And yeah, we're still going. Okay, so cool. We're all loaded up with ink. So he's wearing a cowl, so I'm not really too worried about that part because we're going to go over that later. We're going to do the skin tones first. So do our little test spray here. Yep, got good fine lines. All right, we're moving ink, moving paint well. I'm just concentrating on the tones around the face here, under his chin. Since this is our base layer, we're going to be using that as kind of our shade point. So I'm shooting from the bottom up. Alright, that's our first layer. So now that I still have some paint left in the pot, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the lid. I'll show you guys how I switch colors in between. We're just gonna dump that, set him aside for a moment. Alright, now on to cleaning our airbrush real quick for our next layer. As I've shown in other videos, I take these wooden Q-tips and just kind of move the needle back and forth, and that'll help clean off the tip of your needle while you're spraying out here, and just let that cup empty. Now with the 0.5mm nozzle, obviously you're moving paint through the airbrush a little slower than you normally would with a 0.2 or a 0.4mm, obviously. So it takes a little longer to clean it out doing it this way. Since my studio's in my garage, I can just dump the cup like that, kind of spray it out, dump it again, spray it out, give it a little back flush, dump it. It's just going on my garage studio floor there. Dries up, and I'm just looking for clean bubbles. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're just moving the next shade up. I'm gonna actually take the needle guard off because I don't like them. You can keep the needle guard on, you can turn it off. Just if you're gonna have the needle guard off, especially with this 0.15, you definitely want to be really careful not to bend your needle. So now we're moving on to the natural skin flush, which is skin tone 74.006 in the Fairy Flush set. I've already got that mixed up and ready for airbrushing right here. Just need to give it a little stir. And since our area is so small, just a few drops. That's all we need. Set that aside. Here we go. Layer number 2. We're going to be working our way from the top down this time. At least this is how I'm doing it. So I can go this way to make it so you can see better. And here I'm just kind of concentrating on like the cheekbones. Working on the cheekbones and you know, the bridge of the nose. Just want to add a little bit of highlight to that. Gambit is Cajun, so Louisiana probably spends a little time in the sun on his days off. He's not out kicking butt and throwing explosive cards at people. So I'm gonna make him a little sun-kissed in a bit here by using that Reichland Flesh shade. And we're starting to get some volume there with that layer. every once in a while it's good to just kind of give your tip a little, just kind of pull the ink or paint, whatever you're using, off the tip of the needle, and then just do a quick check spray. All right. That's looking pretty good. I like it. So on to the next color. We'll go ahead and move this back over here. And I've recently gotten quite a few new subscribers to the channel. I really want to thank everyone who's been subscribing, friends, strangers, family alike. I love you guys and really appreciate the support big time. It wasn't my intention when I started this 3D printing adventure to get into painting models and teaching people what I do, but I got a lot of requests and people saying, hey, you should teach people how to do this and stuff. And I said, you know what, why not? It sounds like fun. I love doing this, and I know a lot of other people are in the hobby, and it's drawing and painting and sculpture and just tons of different forms of art throughout my life. Probably since I was about 5 years old and I could pick up a pencil or a crayon, I've been doing artwork. And I went through a phase of a good 20 years where I just didn't really feel like drawing or painting or anything anymore. Just kind of lost my passion for it. And sorry, hang on. All right, we're ready. I'm gonna wait for that airbrush compressor to finish loading up. So for a good 20 years or so, I didn't really do any artwork. And one day, a friend of mine turned me on to 3D printing by just asking me if I'd ever thought about getting into it. Anyhow, we're going to move on to our third color, 74007. This is actual fairy flesh from the fairy flesh set by Vallejo. Give this a good shake. I mixed it a while ago, but it's still kind of it gets chunky pretty quick once you mix it up. Anyhow, my buddy hit me up about 3D printing, and so I got myself an FDM printer for Christmas. My wife picked one up for me. I first experimented around with that, printed some dinosaur skulls and other stuff, and that was fun. And then I started trying to print figures with the FDM printer, and I started painting them, because it was like, what are you going to do with these things? Paint them, and so I started painting them, and I really hated the appearance of the layer lines. And no matter how good I got my settings, and I got really good at my settings, but just no matter how good I got at it and everything, I could still see those layer lines, and I really hate sanding stuff for hours on end to get the right look. So I went ahead and invested in my first resin printer, which is where I'm at now. And then I started printing these figures and models and stuff. Got a couple commissions here and there, and it took off from there. And that's when people started asking me, how did you do that? How did you get those effects with paint? That's unbelievable, blah, 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 blah. Which is, I'm honored anytime I get those kind of compliments. But I decided that, it's too much to describe, or or try to explain when you're hanging out, you know, I'll just make video for you. So I started making some YouTube videos. And same, just to break away from that story for a minute, the same with this, the fairy flesh. I'm just concentrating on the high points of the face, just bringing out some of that volume, shooting from the top, working my way down, you know, from where my light source is. Just very light highlights here to bring that volume up. But anyhow, see, that layer always goes really fast. But anyhow, that's how I got started. I lost track of where I was, but that's how I got started making YouTube videos. I'm definitely not interested in getting rich or anything like that. I was kind of explaining to a couple of my friends that I like that my channel is kind of punk rock right now. You know, I'm open to let it grow, but at the same time, I do appreciate and enjoy the roughness of it. You know, I want you guys to feel like, you know, this is your home. You know, this is, you know, I'm not in some multi-million-dollar studio with like 7 people holding cameras and lights and crap like that. You know, like I can't afford all that shit. So, you know, here I am, you know, in my little makeshift studio down in my garage, just like a lot of you guys are. And you know, I'm gonna teach you and share any knowledge I can, help you out. You know, my advice and artistic knowledge and painting and drawing and everything, that's always free for you guys. And you know, if I can share that with the world before I go someday, like, awesome. You know, I want to see everybody out there making some really cool stuff. And that's about all there is to that. I'm looking at his face now, and I'm pretty damn satisfied with just those 3 layers of paint. And I think we're gonna go ahead and move on to the Reikland Flesh shade. Still a bit of paint left. We'll just dump it out over there. Make it easy. Anytime I dump a little bit of paint on the garage floor, I just wet it down with some water and alcohol, and that breaks it up. And I use, you know, all these Vallejo paints and Citadel. They're all water-based acrylics, so it's really easy to clean my garage. I'm not really worried about it. Some of you guys, may have an in-home studio, which if I was doing this in the house, my wife would probably want to kill me. So yeah, for the sake of making the video easy for you guys to see, I'm not using my my exhaust airbrush station that's got the fan and the lights and stuff. I've tried filming with that thing, but it's pretty tough. When I'm not filming, I use it a lot because it sucks out the overspray and sends it somewhere else to where I'm not breathing it. I can do it here fairly safely because any of the overspray is blowing away from me and onto my paint bottles, which I don't really care about. I know what colors are in there. And yeah, I go off on tangents sometimes. And if I do go off on a tangent and I forget where I'm at or something like that, leave a comment in the comments section. Give it a like. Subscribe to the video if you're not subscribed, or subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Totally appreciate that. I'm trying to pump out as much as I can when I can. I do have a full-time job. I wish I didn't, even though my job's pretty damn cool. So yeah, I might get an hour or 2 to work down here in the studio, a couple days a week or something. But that's usually about it. Now I gotta find Reikland Flesh shade is right here. Yeah, give that a little shake. Now this is I really like this color by Citadel, which I should mention, I am not sponsored by Citadel at all. I am not sponsored by, Vallejo. I'm not sponsored by Royzafar. These are my cheap airbrush paints that I buy. I actually love this brand. It's super cheap Amazon brand. Definitely check them out. They have some great color sets out there for real cheap, and I personally love this paint. It's fantastic. So check it out. And again, I'm not sponsored by any of those people. This is just what I like to use. I'm only endorsing it on a personal level in that I like these paints. They're good. Citadel and Vallejo can be, I don't know what any of your pocketbooks are like, but they tend to be a little more on the expensive side, along with some of the other paints out there. But I like them. So I'm just doing a little test spray here to get the feel of the flow. And obviously with the Reichland, I'm going to be using this in the shadows. Underneath his lip here, under the nose. Every once in a while you'll see me do that where I'm swiping the needle off. That just kind of helps avoid getting dry tip, which is like a little gob of paint on the end of your needle, and then your airbrush will stop spraying the way it's supposed to. You don't want to do that. Got a little too much in one spot, so just with the wet Q-tip I can kind of pull that off of there, and then we'll go in and reblend it. I think that's looking pretty sweet. Can't tell if that's a misprint right here or if he's supposed to have a scar on his chin. I don't know. We'll just roll with it though. Now this 0.15 millimeter nozzle is really, really fine line. You can really paint small with it. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't work as well on a napkin, but I can get down to about the size of a human hair, a little bigger than human hair. Looks like I might have nicked his nose there. Am I gonna have to redo that? No, we'll go back over that in a minute. No big deal. Move on to the ears. Greatest thing about paint is if you screw up something or you're not happy with something, just paint over it and do it again. There's no such thing as a mistake. I kind of come from the school of Bob Ross when it comes to that, No such thing as a bad question. No mistakes, only happy accidents. Move on to his other ear. Now I'm just working on the lips, just a teeny bit at a time here. The frenulum, which is that little indentation below your nose and between your upper lip. I think we're looking good there with that color. I like it. Just need to fix that little spot on his nose. Once I get up to 50 subscribers, I guess from that point I'm able to do live videos, which is really how I think I want to do these portrait videos. Anytime I do a portrait, I'd like to share that with people live so you guys can interact and ask questions and point out any mistakes I make, things like that. I love criticism. It's the best way to learn. If I was never criticized or critiqued growing up doing my artwork, I wouldn't be where I'm at, which I am by no means a professional artist. It's not what I do for a living. When I retire from my current career, I may look into doing professional work, perhaps with sideshow collectibles, any other statue companies that happen to be out there when I retire. And we'll see what happens. So to fix this nose, I'm just gonna see about dry brushing on it. Just give it a little teeny dash of color. It's just the tip of his nose, so I just want to get layer by layer on there, real fine, until that little nick goes away. I'm just using a super cheap, what is this? I can't even read that. I don't know if you guys can read that at all. That's, it's just some brand I found on Amazon that I like. There's Artist Opus. Those guys make amazing dry brushes. They are expensive though, but I will tell you from experience that when you can afford to get yourself the dream brushes you've always wanted, you know, for me, it's, you know, my air brushes, you know, Harder and Steenbeck. I always wanted one of those when I was a kid. They make all the difference in the world, not only just in your soul, you know, 'cause you got that dream thing you wanted, but usually the more expensive the product is, you get what you pay for. That's what I'm trying to say. Take the jump, don't be scared, but take that jump and buy that expensive airbrush and use it and see how it feels. They tend to last a lot longer than the really cheap ones. My cheap ones end up becoming, you know, some of them just turn into holding sticks for, you know, when I'm primering models and stuff like that. You know, like here's one. I just jam it up into the drainage hole, you know. But get yourself some nice brushes when you can, and give them a try. It's well worth it to just try it. I do have a few Artist Opus brushes. I don't use them very often. I just want a very tiny amount of paint on the end of that dry brush here. I'm just gonna touch his nose up a little bit here. There, fixed. The nick is gone. And then what I'll do is put another drop of Reichland Flesh Shade in the airbrush and give it a final little sweep, and that'll touch off the main surface of the face, I think, to my satisfaction. I don't really have a set plan when I start, except for maybe the colors I'm going to use. I could add color, I could subtract, you know, I might go back over something and be like, I don't like that. So you guys are kind of watching me do this in real time, as far as like how I'm doing it and what choice, what direction I want to go. Yeah, I like that. I think he's looking pretty good there. Put my magnifying glasses on so I can see a little better. Oh, that looks horrible. No, I'm just kidding. I don't like it. I think we're good there. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is seal this. By seal, I mean with a matte spray paint. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. If you guys have made it through the video this far, I'm pretty impressed. I don't mind if you guys skip ahead or anything. It does do me a huge help if you like and subscribe, though. I do like that. Trying to get, like I said earlier, trying to get to 50 subscribers so that I can start doing live video feed, which would be super sweet. So I'm just using a rattle can. I like this Krylon Fusion flat clear or matte clear. It seals good and protects your layer. And I'm gonna do that real quick off camera. Cool. All right, so here we are, we're done with that. Just give them a little quick dry. I did steal my wife's hair dryer. I think I've said that before. I did steal it. She now has another one, so no hair dryers were harmed in the making of this video. I will not be harmed either, but anyhow, get yourself one with a cooling button so that you're not blasting it with hot air. Make sure that's good and dry. Looks pretty good. Should be. Yep, we're good. Okay, on to the next part. We're going to use what's called, well, I think a lot of people have just started to call it the sideshow method, and that's with our 3 washes. And what this does is it imitates all the little what's the word I'm looking for? It imitates all the little veins, blood vessels, and inconsistencies in our skin. And you do 1 layer at a time, and then we're gonna wash it up, wipe it up with I love stealing my wife's makeup brushes, so probably. I always like to test and make sure it's gonna get into the spots I needed to get it into. I got this little guy too. Yeah, I think I use this one instead, at least for the yellow wash. And then I like to use just like an old brush, like that, and just gonna paint real good over all that, get it into the recesses and all around the skin, up on the ears. You don't want to leave it on too long because it can stain. Yellow, not so bad, but the red can definitely stain. Just go around and pick that up. I like these because they have the little needle, kind of the real pointy end. You can get into the eyes, get those get into those little detail spots you can't reach with a standard sponge. That looks good. All right, next color. Give this a quick rinse. These are just stupid cheap brushes I found on Amazon. I don't recommend them. I don't like them. I'll never buy them again. Find something else. That's our yellow. Now we're going to do our red. A little shake. And these are really watered down. What I'm using are Game Ink by Vallejo. I'm using about 25% ink and 75% water in my mixture. And that's also something you kind of just experiment with until you find the consistency that you're looking for and the effect. That's why I always keep a premix on me, you know, that's already done, because it's gonna give me the effect I want, because I've already used it on other models and it worked out pretty well. Right, there we go. I'm gonna pick this up. In a minute, I'll show you why we sealed it before we did this part. Cool. It's looking nice. Get some yellows and some red tones in the grooves there. Starting to look like real skin, which is what we're going for. And then our final wash is our blue. Same thing, about 25% ink, 75% distilled water. I only ever use distilled water in any of my painting. Depending on where you live, well, where I live in Southern California, our water is extremely hard here, and if I'm using my airbrush, I definitely don't want those minerals and everything getting into my paint and trying to be atomized through my airbrush, because that can fuck shit up. I don't like it. So I get myself a big, like, 2-gallon jug of distilled water, and I use that only on all my painting projects. So now this is our little crucial part here, just dabbing out that blue. Okay, now I'm gonna take some alcohol and give it a little spritz. Hopefully you can see on camera what that does. It's kind of like the little magic part that brings out the veins, and it's very subtle. His head's pretty small, so it's not as strong it's not as strong an effect as I might like, but it gets the job done. The skin's pretty convincing to me. Got a little vein in his forehead now. It's very, very subtle. Yeah. Digging the way that turned out. I think that looks pretty darn good. And now what I like to do is go in with a real fine brush. I'm going to touch up some details. So I'm using that Reichland flesh shade to kind of highlight some of the wrinkles in the skin, and just give it a little more depth. Painting men's lips specifically, I like to use the Reichland flesh shade just by itself. Usually a couple layers will do it. It gets a little darker for each layer that you put on. Seraphim Sepia by Citadel is also a real nice color for getting lips. Get the just natural tone, you know, not like they have lipstick on or anything like that. Get my magnifying glasses here so I can see a little better. I'm very blind when it comes to being close up, so I have to use these jeweler's glasses. You can find these pretty cheap on Amazon. These are interchangeable, up to different magnification, so that's pretty handy. So I'm just going back and forth and kind of checking each side, looking for that good symmetry. Bringing up a little volume on his lips here. He's got a little tiny scar on his nose. Let that sit for a second and just give it a little tap. It'll be very, very subtle, but it'll be there. Alright, I like how that looks. Cool. Got a little closer for you guys to check out. I like the way that's looking. It's like Mike Tyson got to him before anybody else could. Bit off a little chunk of his ear. Alright, so now we're ready to do the sclera here. I didn't realize I'd been filming for an hour already. I may have to edit this down a bit. I think I'm just gonna go with a cheap black on the sclera. Actually, I really like this Abaddon black by Citadel, so I think I'm gonna use that. That was messy. Time to change that glove. Paint all over it. So for Gambit, his sclera, if you look at any of the comic books and stuff, they're black. So that's how we're gonna do it. They're black, and then he's got like a glowing, kind of the same purple glow that he's got with his energy, or whatever you want to call it. Looks good shape. On to the next one. And put a little, when you see me doing this on my thumb, I'm basically shaping the brush and getting any excess paint off that I don't need. to my smaller brush here. So I got a little spot that I didn't really care for, so I'm gonna mix in some of that original flesh tone that I made, the 006, just real thin. All right, go back and fix that eyeball. Make sure it's dry. Trying to wrap this up tonight so I can get upstairs and watch Daredevil with the wife, because we love that show. If you guys haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend checking it out because it is good. Gambit's eyes are a little tricky. Really, really tiny. He's kind of squinting, so you can really work the paint into those tough to reach areas. There we go. I like that. This eyeball's still a little uneven. Cool. A little bit of white scar. We're just gonna put a tiny drop on each eyeball, and then go over that with some Doomfire Magenta. Went a little too high on that. So I'm going to very carefully take that paint out. You can also use a toothpick, works better if you go a little too high on something like that. Checking back and forth on each eye to make sure they're about the same size, or pretty much exactly the same size if you can get it that way. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I'll redo the whole freaking eye if I have to. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna want that to dry real quick. Little bit of Doomfire Magenta here. Mix that up with some water. You just want it to be nice and thin. This is the way I'm envisioning it in my head anyways. Hopefully it works. We're just going to apply a wash like that. think I can use the paint straight out of the cup. Let's try it that way. It just feels a little too thin for my liking. I think that looks pretty sick. Yeah, I like it. Cool. Let me move on to the cowl. I'm gonna take a little break though. Be right back. Alright, so off camera during my break, went ahead and masked up the face and the ears with some latex by liquid latex by Vallejo. Love this stuff. And yeah, ready to paint the cowl. Gonna be doing the hair last with the dry brush, so got some paint ready for the cowl. And just gonna stir that up a little bit. This is a custom mix I made myself. It's kind of a bluish black. I painted his pants and his gloves and stuff with the same color, and I went over with the highlights with this blue black it's a lighter bluish gray, I should say. And we'll be touching up parts of the cowl with that as well. So for now, we're ready to paint the cowl. Now when I'm painting with the 0.15 millimeter needle, I like to turn my compressor, I like to turn my pressure down to right about between 18 and 20 pounds PSI. I'm usually working up close, and I don't want that paint squirting everywhere. With larger needles, I usually keep my pressure right around, usually between 20 and 25 PSI. Alright, so we're good there. And that's pretty much about the last time I think I'm going to need to really use the airbrush on this model, so I can kind of break it down and start cleaning it up and getting it set aside. Never let paint dry in your airbrush. Get that stuff cleaned out immediately when you're done using it. Don't even walk away from your airbrush for like 5 minutes, unless your wife's dying or your significant other, whoever it may be. Don't let anybody die. Definitely put down the airbrush at that point. But on a normal day, don't let paint dry in your airbrush. Clean it out really good when you're done with it. Put it back in its case. Keep dust out of it. Take good care of your stuff. It'll last you a long, long time. Especially if you paid a lot of money. This particular airbrush is about $322, I believe, USD. It's from Harder and Steenbeck. Might be able to find it a little cheaper on Amazon. The CR Plus comes with a 0.15 and a 0.2 millimeter needle, I believe. I like to put a little bit of alcohol through my airbrush when I'm done using it. Just acts as a solvent to get anything and everything out of there best as possible. I also like to make sure it's spraying clean when I'm done with it. Alright, it's pretty good. Now they all come with a pretty nice little case here. A little bit of everything in that. Store that away. And we're good to go. Off to a little bit of dry brushing on the cowl. Touch off some highlights. We call that part of the portrait done. Anytime I custom mix a color during a project, I'll always make a little extra, set it aside in case I need to go through and fix anything. Accidents happen. Happy accidents. You can see that's got a nice blue, dark bluish gray tone to it. That's going to be our highlight color for the cowl. Go. And trusty old makeup brush. This is not my wife's, but these work fantastic. They're on Amazon, dirt cheap. Just look up makeup brush. You just want a very small amount of paint on there. That's looking good. Test it on your hand. Yeah. And I'm going to be catching these wrinkles back here in the cowl. Up on the head a little bit. Take a little bit off there. Just want barely. Great thing about that latex masking is you can work over it, you know, if you got some details to put in. I'm just blending a little bit here into the shadow behind the cowl. You can see you can get some really subtle shadows and like that. All right, cool. Set that aside. And the hair, I'm a little iffy on. Not really sure how I want to do that one yet. So I'm gonna start off with like a dark brown. This is just dirt cheap, craft smart, craft paint. I'm going to use a matte acrylic paint. And this is just on the fly, so we'll see how it turns out. Once I get this first layer of brown down, I'm probably gonna use a darker wash to get into all the recesses, and then follow that up with a dry brush layer of a lighter brown to bring out some highlights. Just working my way around the bottom of the lower portions of the hair where the cowl's coming out, where it's coming out of the cowl. Once again, I need my magnifying glasses because I can't see shot. Need a pointier brush. And now we're getting somewhere. Might have to go over it a couple times in some spots. Dope. Oh, big old chunk of his hair just broke off. Sweet. I don't know where that flew off to. We'll have to fix that later. That's a whole other tutorial video. What to do when that happens. But there's a way to fix that. It's pretty easy. I'm just about running out of time. Now it gives us some pretty good coverage. I think I'm satisfied with that. Alright, get that dried off and get on to the next layer. So playing around with a couple different colors, I settled on Agrax Earthshade, Garagax Sewer, mixed with a little bit of water. It was a little too thick for my liking on it all by itself, so I mixed it in with a little water and got the right consistency, and it looks nice. Once it dries, it's a nice darker shade of brown, seeps into the cracks pretty well, and then it leaves the lighter brown on top pretty well. You'll see that there. Kind of giving it a nice little wash. Get those darker shades in between the higher points of the hairs. You don't have to do his hair the same way I do. This is just a guide to show you how I'm doing it. Like I said, I kind of make it up as I go along too. I like it. I like it a lot. Get that dried off. And then we'll start some dry brushing for the finish. I'll be back in a second. All right, let's get on with a little bit of dry brushing, and I think we might be done with the portrait. Let's see how it goes. When I do this on the hair, I like to just follow the grain of the hair. I think I want to use a lighter brown for that. This stuff's pretty dark. Let's see how this looks. I have another brown set aside. This is Mornfang brown. It's an air paint from Citadel. So we'll just try a little bit of that and see how it looks. It's a little bit lighter. Yeah, I like the way that's looking. That looks nice. Should we go a little lighter maybe on some spots? I'm kind of digging it. I don't know. What do you think? I think that looks pretty dope. I think I'm gonna call it good. Yeah. I think our portrait is finished. Let's peel off our mask and see how we did. This part's always so satisfying. I just love this. I just usually use my finger to kind of rub it off there. You can use a little piece of it too if you miss a spot, and use a little piece and kind of grab it. Sometimes that'll work. Alright, going back to that. It's going to be stubborn. You can also use tweezers to get into these little spots here. I don't have fingernails because I pick them off. I am a picker, not a biter. Thank you very much. Use this little popsicle stick to kind of get that off there. Oh, that part's being really stubborn. And we'll go back in later and touch this stuff up, but a few things to touch up, really. Well, for the most part, aside from a few touch-ups, this bad boy is done. Yeah, gotta fix these little spots right in here. Outline his cowl a little better. Definitely gotta touch that up there. A little bit of dry brushing, fix his ear. Other than that, that's a good portrait. I'm happy with it. Cheers.